You need to hear what this family found on the edge of the Dolly Sods Wilderness. Because the Appalachian Mountains don't give up land without a reason. In the spring of 2013, deep within the highland plateau of Dolly Sods in Tucker County, West Virginia, one of the most remote and genuinely unnerving stretches of the entire Appalachian Mountains, a single mother named Lena Prater paid $100 for 4 cabins sitting right on the wilderness boundary. She thought she was building something, a business, a legacy, something that was finally hers. Everything was fine until the fall of 2015, when a 400-pound bear turned up dead against a tree with no cause anyone could explain, and guests started checking out 2 days early and leaving 1-star reviews that all said the same thing. Something walked around the outside of the cabin at night, something upright, something that pressed against the walls. By the time Lena drove up to winterize the property that November, her rental business was already gone. By the time she left, her truck was on its side in the gravel lot, placed there, not rolled, and she had looked through a cabin window at something crossing the clearing that she has never described to anyone in terms that hold up in the daylight. She still owns the land. She has not been back. What you are about to hear is the account. Her name is Lena Prater, and this happened to her in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. This was the 9th year. Lena loaded the same blue Rubbermaid tote into the same Chevy Tahoe on a Thursday morning in May 2013. Sunscreen, fire starter, Dale's thermos, the girls' rain boots. Same order. Every spring break since Macy was 4. Same Route 32. Same left onto Laneville Road where the GPS died and she drove from memory. Dale rode up front with his bad knees against the dash. Macy had her field journal open before they cleared the county line. Bren was asleep before Morgantown left the mirror. At the east rim of the plateau, Lena pulled off at the gravel turnout she always used. Macy climbed out and wrote the date. 8 entries in the front pages already, 1 per year. The wind had a specific register up here. Not a howl, a low, sustained pressure, like the mountain exhaling without stopping. Dale built the fire, and it crackled into nothing but that sound. No birds at the tree line. Lena noticed and worked to unnotice it. Macy crouched at the creek bank sketching a crayfish. Bren followed. That was when Lena noticed the old man at the edge of the campsite, watching, thick through the shoulders, 70s. He watched Macy with the patience of a man who had already decided something. Harlan Goss. He had 4 cabins a quarter-mile east, right where the wilderness boundary softened into private land. He had found the right family. $100, wife gone, kids in Ohio, done with the land. 2 days later at the diner in Parsons, Ruth Hensley stamped the quitclaim deed and looked up when Harlan said, "Done." Her mouth opened, then closed. She slid the paper across without finishing whatever that was. Lena noticed, filed it under nothing, and recorded the deed the next morning. The land was hers. She watched Harlan walk toward the tree line. Only later, on Laneville Road with the girls asleep, did the thing surface. 3 springs at Dolly Sods, and not once had she seen a vehicle near him. No truck. No car along the shoulder. He was just there. And then he wasn't. 2 years of work. Lena patched the cabin roofs herself on weekends, drove up with Dale 14 times between 2013 and 2015. New mattresses, a cast-iron fire ring between the cabins, window screens that actually kept the bugs out. By Memorial Day 2015, all 4 cabins were booked solid through Labor Day. Macy ran the reservation ledger in a composition notebook. Bren sold firewood bundles from a folding table for $2 each, and kept the money in a mason jar she hid under her bunk. It was the best summer of Lena's life. The goal was real. The clock was met. Then the fall arrived. A guest in cabin 3 found the bear on a Tuesday morning in late September, 400 pounds, on its side against the base of a large red oak at the edge of the tree line. Not shot, not trapped, no visible wound. The bark 8 feet up the trunk was gouged and splintered in a way the Tucker County wildlife officer said he hadn't seen before. Not claw marks. Impact marks. Like the animal had been driven into the tree from behind or above. He photographed it, tagged it, left. No cause of death that satisfied anyone. He did not come back. That same afternoon, Massey, who had not been supposed to be at the scene, crouched near the oak for a long time before Lena pulled her away. That night, Macy wrote 3 lines in her field journal and tore the page out. Lena found the torn edges in the binding 2 weeks later. She did not ask about it. That tells you she already knew, on some level, that she didn't want the answer. The guest reports came the following week. 3 separate groups checked out early over the next 2 weeks, none in contact with each other, none reaching Lena before posting. 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 star, beautiful location, never going back. All 3 used nearly the same language. Something moved around the outside of the cabin in the dark. Not an animal sound. Upright. Breathing heavy. It pressed against the exterior walls hard enough that the boards flexed inward. A couple from Elkins described a sound. Screaming, they wrote, but not human. Nothing from any field guide. Coming from the wilderness side of the property after 3 in the morning. Lena drove up to cabin 3 and stood in the doorway. The smell the reviews mentioned, copper and wet rot, one group wrote. Like a kill site, the Elkins couple said, and they hunted, so they knew, was completely gone. Pine and cold air off the plateau. Nothing else. The absence of the smell bothered her more than the presence would have. The booking calendar emptied before the season ended. Dale drove Lena back to Morgantown after the last guests left, both girls quiet in the back seat. Several miles of Route 32 passed before he said anything. When he did, it was one sentence. Bears don't get thrown. Lena said nothing. Dale did not repeat it. He kept both hands on the wheel and watched the road the way he did when he had already finished thinking something through and reached somewhere he wasn't going to share. That was the gap between them. Not a fight. Not even a disagreement. Just Dale on one side of a line he'd already crossed, and Lena still standing at the edge of it, looking for a way the math could come out differently. The booking calendar sat empty on Macy's desk in Morgantown. 22 reservations gone. The cast iron fire ring was still out there on the plateau, and whatever had pressed hard enough against those walls to flex the boards was still out there too. Nobody said that part out loud. But Lena thought about Bren, 6 years old, the summer they first bought the land, and something the girl had said at the creek that first visit that nobody had followed up on. Something about footprints near the bank. Too big, Bren said, and only one. Lena had told her it was a deer print that washed out funny. She had believed that then. Lena drove up with Dale and the girls on a Friday in late November to winterize, one weekend. Drain the pipes, board the windows, haul out the perishables. They would stay in cabin 1. Whatever Lena decided about the business, whether to reopen in the spring, whether to sell, whether to let it sit, she had until Sunday. After Sunday, the property would be empty until April, and whatever was out there on the wilderness side would have it to itself until then. They arrived in the early afternoon, gray sky already pressing down close to the plateau. The elevation killed the light early up here in late fall, flattened it, made 4 in the afternoon look like the hour before dark. Lena unlocked cabin 1 and got the heat going while Dale walked the perimeter the way he always did, hands in his coat pockets, not speaking. Macy took her field journal to the picnic table. Bren followed 2 steps behind. Lena was pulling perishables from the cabin 3 pantry when Dale came back and said they needed to see something. The Tahoe was on its side in the gravel lot. Not rolled, not nudged from a slope. Set on its side, driver's door facing the sky, with the precision of something that had decided where it wanted the vehicle and placed it there. The gravel beneath was pushed outward in a rough circle. Not inward. Outward. Whatever moved the truck had not pushed it from one side. It had lifted it. In the soft mud at the lot's edge, single-foot impressions pressed 3 inches deep. They led away from the truck, not toward it, toward the wilderness tree line. Dale crouched at the impressions and stayed there longer than made sense. Then he went inside and put coffee on. He did not call anyone. He did not look at Lena in a way that asked what they should do. He had already answered that question for himself, and whatever the answer was, he was keeping it. Dale, 40 years in the West Virginia highlands, a man who trusted the woods more than most people trusted other people, had looked at those impressions and decided not to call anyone, not to leave, not to say a word to the girls. Lena could never decide then or later whether that was the bravest thing she had ever seen or the most frightening. She went back inside and finished packing the kitchen. That was what she had. Control. She inventoried the canned goods, wrote every item on a list, 23 lines, got to the bottom and started again from the top, 4 times before Dale came and took the pen out of her hand. Outside, the wilderness made no sound. No wind, no insects, nothing. The way a room goes quiet when the person who was just speaking has left it. On her way back inside, Lena put her hand flat against the exterior wall of cabin 1. The boards were cold in a way that didn't match the temperature. Not just cold, damp. As though something warm had pressed against the outside long enough to leave condensation behind. She pulled her hand back and wiped it on her jeans without thinking about why. The gray ceiling locked tighter as the afternoon died. The trail from the cabin to the gravel lot ran uphill. It had been flat that morning. Dale noticed. She could tell by the way he took the slope without comment and said nothing. Sunday was still 36 hours away. They had righted the truck with the come-along from the shed, and it started, which meant an exit existed. That was the thing Lena kept returning to as the dark came down. Not the impressions, not the damp boards, not the circle of pushed-out gravel. Just that the truck started and the road was still there. The impressions in that mud were not from one trip. The spread said that clearly. Multiple returns to the same edge of the clearing. The same depth each time, like something checking a threshold it had already decided on. It had just never knocked before. The banging started at 2 a.m. on the north wall of cabin 1. Not the pressing the guests had described. Not something testing the boards. This was impact. Heavy, rhythmic, deliberate. Hard enough to knock a lantern off the shelf above the wood stove and shake the window frames in their casings. Dale was on his feet before the second hit. Lena was already at the edge of the bed, keys in her hand. She didn't remember picking them up. The screaming started seconds later. It came from the north tree line and moved in a slow circuit around the cabin. Not frantic, not fleeing, methodical, like something confirming every angle before it decided. Not an animal from any field guide. The sound of something that had no reason to warn you and was warning you anyway. Macy appeared in the doorway to the back room. Bren, behind her, half asleep, one hand on Macy's shoulder. "Go back," Lena said. "Lock that door." The lock clicked. Lena heard it. "The truck starts," Dale said. He was at the window. Roads passable. She had the keys 30 feet to the truck. Roads still open. She stood with all of it accounted for, and went to the window anyway. The clearing was empty. Then it wasn't. It came from the north tree line slowly. No charge, no lurch from the dark. It stepped out the way something steps through a doorway it has used before, weight shifting forward with the ease of familiarity. Upright. Moving on 2 legs at a pace that was almost patient, like it had timed this and found the timing acceptable. Lena's first thought was that it was a man. The upright posture, the 2-legged walk, the forward lean of the shoulders. Her brain reached for man and held it for maybe 2 full seconds before the scale registered. It was not a man's scale. The shoulders were broad in a way that didn't belong to anything walking on 2 legs. Thick through the upper body the way old timber is thick. The mass of something that had been accumulating a long time. The arms were long. Too long. She registered it slowly, the way you register something wrong in a photograph before you can name what it is. They swung with the stride, knuckles clearing the frozen ground by inches. The head sat forward on the neck rather than upright, the profile blunt across the brow. It crossed the clearing without looking at the cabin. Lena did not breathe. Dale was behind her, his breathing controlled in the way that meant he had stopped trying to. Cold pressed sharp through the glass into her knuckles. Through the gap at the bottom of the sash, the smell came, copper and wet rot, deep and close, the way a kill site smells when the cold hasn't finished what the heat started. She had gone to cabin 3 after the guests left and smelled nothing. It was not nothing now. Halfway across the clearing it stopped. No warning, no stumble. It simply stopped, weight settled, and stood. Then it turned its head toward the window, not its body. Just its head, a slow rotation, unhurried, the way you turn to look at something you already knew was there. The face was in shadow. Lena could not see the face and was grateful for it in a way she has never been able to articulate without her voice changing. She did not move. It did not move. The cold was in her knuckles, her wrists, climbing her forearms. Bren said one word in her sleep in the back room, and the word was Macy's name. Lena thought about Harlan Goss watching Macy sketch at the creek bank in 2013. That long, patient moment before he spoke. The way a man watches something when he is deciding whether it is worth a warning. He had not warned her. It turned back toward the wilderness and walked. Same pace, same patience. The screaming did not return. The moment it crossed the tree line, the sound closed off completely. Not faded, closed, like a door pulled shut from the other side. The clearing was empty. The cold was in Lena's elbows. The impressions in the mud caught the flat gray light from the window. There were too many sets, not 2 or 3 trips, many more, the same edge, the same depth, long before tonight. The question of when it started was bad enough. The worse one, the one that sat in her chest from that night forward like ballast, was whether it had ever stopped when they weren't there to see it. Lena filed no report. There was no language for what she saw that held up in daylight, and she had 2 daughters who still had to sleep at night. She drove them back to Morgantown on Sunday morning in a truck that started fine, down a road that was exactly where it had always been. She did not say a word about the window or the clearing. Neither did Dale. Neither, notably, did Macy. The quitclaim deed went into a manila folder in the filing cabinet in the spare room, next to the girls' school records and the car insurance. Lena stopped responding to booking requests without explanation. The rental business closed the way some things close in the Highlands, quietly, without a sign, and with no one named responsible. She did not sell the property. That is the detail that stays with people when they hear this account. The land was hers. She kept it. The following spring, Dale drove up alone. He told Lena it was to check the pipes. He came home the same day, which he had not planned to do. He set his keys on the counter and did not speak. He never suggested she sell. He never said what he found or did not find up there. And Lena stopped wondering why, because she already knew. Dale had walked that property alone and reached some understanding with whatever the sods held, and he carried it home in his chest like ballast and never put it down. 3 years passed. Macy turned 13. At the kitchen table one evening in March, Macy looked up from her homework and asked if they could go back to Dolly Sods for spring break. Lena said maybe next year. She has said this 3 years in a row. Macy does not push. At 13, Macy understands what maybe next year means, and the fact that she does not push is the specific detail that haunts Lena more than anything else about that night. Her daughter stopped asking in a way that meant she already knew the answer. A 10-year-old with a field journal and 8 years of date entries and a torn-out page she has never explained. She already knew. The manila folder is still in the filing cabinet. Lena has opened it twice since that November. Once to confirm the deed was there, once for a reason she cannot explain. On the back of the deed, in pencil, is a single notch mark. Not her handwriting, not Dale's. She does not know when it appeared. She has not told anyone. She has not thrown it away. The Dolly Sods Wilderness covers more than 17,000 acres of plateau forest in Tucker County, West Virginia, one of the most geologically distinct and isolated stretches in the entire Appalachian Mountains. The private land on its edge is bought and sold by people who think they understand what they are acquiring. Lena Prater understood she was getting 4 cabins and a creek and a view off the East Ridge. She was right about all of that. What the Appalachian Mountains do not include in the deed, what no quitclaim in Tucker County ever has, is what has been using the boundary land on its own schedule since before any of those documents existed. What crosses that clearing when it decides to. What turns its head back at the window and holds. Lena still owns the property. She has not been back. In these mountains, ownership is a thing you believe in until something older decides otherwise.